Say yes, that would be cool to learn a new skill as an old dog. I don't know if you say that you know so this is because you calm until you get emotional, and then I get my ears blown off. Okay, well just know that this is an amplifier. This is a microphone, and even though you're people in a little room, this could be amplified to millions of people can hear it. You don't need to be screamed out. Oh my God, now you're calling yourself a stallion. All right, on this note, hi, it's Alyssa. And we are Short Hills live in the Middle East. Oh, wow. Okay, well, if last week wasn't a real kicker, we are on to the drama of the Middle East. And we had an idea of how we wanted to start this podcast, but in lieu of how many rockets are been
last
headed?
I looked earlier today, there were over 500 rockets fired from Gaza.
We're gonna just get right into what's happening to us now as two Americans living in the Middle East and what it's like to feel a sense of most likely, maybe, good chance that we could hear a siren either in the middle of this podcast or anybody, any of us in Israel, any citizen, innocent citizen doing whatever, might have to run out of this podcast and into a bomb shelter because the rockets are flying. And since they do come with love from Iran, God knows how far the distance that the rockets go. Would that be the word? What the projectile of the rockets?
Yeah, I think they have the ability to hit anywhere in Israel if they want.
Well, that's a comforting feeling.
Luckily, we're fighting Arabs and not Germans. We just finished Yom HaShoah, which was Holocaust Remembrance Day. If Germans know how to kill people much more efficiently than Arabs, this is the gang that doesn't shoot straight. The only thing that's helping the Israeli army put down this rebellion is that we're not fighting really a trained army that knows what they're doing.
But I don't know if we're really fighting Hamas, or actually this time it was called Islamic Jihad. That's who's taking responsibility for all of these rockets. We are really fighting Iran when you think about it. And that is the most terrorist state in the world, country in the world.
I think we're definitely fighting Iran, and I don't know that it really makes a difference whether they call it Hamas or Hezbollah or Islamic Jihad. It's all the same.
All terrorists.
Yeah, and
and they do it well.
The Arab conquest coming out of Arabia is an idea not different from Christianity and the Crusades or Rome, that wanted to take over territory and command it and expand. We're living here as Jews in the Middle East, and the Jewish idea from the Torah, and I know that Alyssa doesn't like when I go there, is a little bit different. It's a God that took us out of a specific state of Egypt to live in a specific place, to be a nation, not to be conquestial and take over multiple lands, which is most of the human history. Empires want to expand and take over. The Israel idea, which is a Torah idea, we didn't create it, comes that we are supposed to live in a specific land. So I don't know what we're going to be able to do about it. This is an age-old problem, but it's going to continue, and we don't really seem to have leadership right now that is willing to do the necessary things to put down this rebellion.
I'd like to really go back to the beginning and talk a little bit less about the history, less about religion, and about two human beings and what it is like. I think that many people that we grew up with have absolutely no idea what it is. And I pray that not one of you ever understand what war feels like, because it is the most disturbing, unsettling, terrifying thing ever. Hearing a siren in the middle of the night, waking you up in the morning. You never know when, where, what. I call it adult musical chairs. And it's a horrific feeling. And so I thought, let's talk a little bit right now that we first have been dealing with a lot of border protests in the last year and incendiaries, balloons, kites, anything that a child might really like. And the Arabic terrorists or the Gazan Arabs, there's a lot of terminology to use to these people that live in Gaza, pretty much terrorizing our southern border.
They're lighting our fields.
So lighting our fields. So we have a lot, we have a lot of stuff that's been going on. And so the southern border is completely under duress, I would say, for more than a year. It's intense over there.
Correct, but do you want to understand the context?
Oh, you could do that as long as you don't go back 3,000 years.
No, it's not 3,000 years. When This week is a
I
really
just I
great-
need to be present. I'm like so like lost
We're
at this
about
point.
to celebrate Yom HaZikaron this week, which is our Memorial Day for all the fallen soldiers in the modern-day Israeli wars. That's from 1948 on, so it's called the Day of Remembrance, Yom HaZikaron, and then we go right into Independence Day, which is Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Yom Ha'atzmaut.
And those will be celebrated this week, Tuesday evening to Wednesday, Yom HaZikaron, and Wednesday evening to Thursday, Yom Ha'atzmaut. So what this is all about is that Israel prevailed in many, many wars where Arab armies and Arab nations tried to defeat us. Now that they've been defeated militarily, starting in 1948 and 1967 and the Yom Kippur War 1973, to name three big ones, they realize that they will not be able to defeat us in a conventional war. What does that mean? That means that they have to come up with another way to try to take down the Israel state, and that is with protests or border response or getting other countries in Europe to see the plight of the Palestinian nation, which is a complete nonsense and not really, we've talked about that in the past, it has nothing to do with the Arab community that's living here. It's something that was renamed by a Roman emperor that lived 2,000 years ago.
There we go, back again. I knew it. You're going to take us on a long
We have to
path.
understand where the Palestinian name comes from.
Of course, but we've done that many times. And what I really, really want to talk about, because right now it's hot in the news, and we understand as citizens, because we are feeling it and are experiencing it, and fellow Israelis are completely under the gun. And that's really why I want to jump into this. And let's not go back 3,000 years, but let's talk about what's presently happening. For example, again, Seth shocked me. I thought we were at 400 rockets. We are at 500 rockets. 500 rockets. Think of, I don't know, 500 hot dogs, 500 crayons. Think of basic things in the number of hundreds and 500. That is a lot. Now think of that as a boom that can scare the hell out of you. Imagine living in an environment where 500 times you hear that sound, that vibration. At this point, most of the residents of southern Israel were on a beautiful Shabbat yesterday, on a beautiful Saturday. They were all in bomb shelters.
But they've been living under this type of pressure.
But this was really intense. Let's also acknowledge that, yes, we do have bomb shelters, and I feel like we're like the spoiled Jews. But by the way, in Israel, we have every religion. So when I speak of Israeli citizens, I speak of Israeli citizens across the board that live in this country that are in harm's way when there are rockets in the air.
Just to address that, we're dealing with a present-day problem that is created because Israel has won in conventional wars. So you have a population in Gaza that wants to protest, and they don't have an army, they don't have the ability to do that anymore. So what they've been doing is in the south is sending over, Alyssa was saying, incendiary balloons that are filled with gasoline that when they burst, they destroy Israel agriculture and crops. Right next to Gaza are people who are farmers who make their livelihood by growing things. And this is one of the ways that they can feel like they're striking out and hurting the state of Israel by destroying that agriculture. That's been going on for over a year. It's one of the reasons that the government failed, and now there's a new government.
Let me get back on here. Learning the concept of sharing the mic. It's not easy. So what I was talking about before was that why do I feel guilty about being in shelters, that Israeli citizens have shelters? Because the Israeli government has given us shelters. Now, understand, and you probably know this, and that's where you're going to go off, is that how much money or how many resources does Israel give to Gaza? Now, understand, we sent money and we sent materials to create whatever, housing, shelters, whatever the Gazans needed, whatever the Arabs of Gaza needed, the money has been sent to them. Instead, Hamas, which is a known terrorist organization, used that money, and instead of helping their citizens, they put their citizens to work to create terror tunnels, so that tunnels go from one area in Gaza into someone's kitchen in Israel, or a playground, or a school. And they also did it through Egypt too. And we can only call them terror tunnels.
Correct.
Now,
So
I'm
there's-
going to ask you, what is it that Israel has given to the Gazans, to Hamas?
Well,
You
it's
must
not-
know what
yeah.
they gave.
Well, we
what
collect
they-
taxes for money that is spent, and that helps to keep the electricity on. Gaza doesn't have its own electricity source. It's all due to the largesse of Israel providing it. Their money that they receive otherwise is from European nations that want to help the Palestinians.
Or Arabic nations probably get a lot of money.
No, the Arabs don't give any money, actually. It's
Interesting.
from the Christian European nations that are funding this, because part of anti-Semitism, and we've spoken about it, goes back to Christian anti-Semitism that is really very, very present, that they're the ones that are supplying the money to keep this Arab thorn in Israel's side. So
I would say a lot of people would probably question, why does Israel still own the electrical grid? Why would they?
Because
Why did they not separate? When we left Gaza, why didn't we remove ourselves from their electrical grid and give them their grid? I don't know what it's called. I'm not an electrical lady.
It's a great question, Alyssa, but in order to build a nation, you have to build hospitals, schools, an electrical grid, all these types of infrastructure, universities and things like that, that were not built by this Arab population because it's busy building terror tunnels, as you said. It's much easier to have people building terror tunnels than to actually go through the painstaking hardship of building a country. There was no grid to turn over to them. They'd have to build it from themselves. If we didn't supply them with electricity, then the narrative would be from
that we kept them in the dark.
That we kept them in the dark in the press, that we weren't helping them out. So we're really in a catch-22. We can give them the electricity because we have the ability to do that. If we don't, then we're the bad guys for not doing it. So they don't have anything to turn over to them. They don't have it.
Okay, so you know what? I was asking you about the $30 million ransom that Hamas wants from the state of Israel, and it's based on money that we owe from Qatar, something that we got money from Qatar. It's probably some weird thing. And that's something that we need to really address, and that is the media. And that is why part of creating Short Hills Live in the Middle East has occurred, because we want you to ask us questions. We want you to negate us or say, yeah, we love what you're saying, bringing us to another level of understanding. And that is what's happening here, is that we're sitting here as you know, we are in Israel and we understand what's going on. Are we at the border? I'll admit, I'm not at the border. I would actually be too frightened to go to the border. Seth, on the other hand, would probably be fascinated at the border. But I want to also say a couple of things about literally what's happening. And so these are really important things to keep in mind, what's happening at the southern border. We have the border protests. And tomorrow we start the Arabic holiday of Ramadan. And so the Muslims will be fasting all day. And then in the evening, they will eat, which I don't know about hungry people all day long. That doesn't seem to me that's going to go so well in this situation of people being peaceful and being more mellow. I would think that because it's Ramadan and more spiritual time, that they're going to really, really be more hate insightful. Would that be a word that's coming out of the mosques? Not only we have the Memorial Day, which Seth talked about, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaTzmaut. Again, we're going to keep talking about it because these are such important days for the Israeli. And last but not least, we also have something called Eurovision. And this, as an American, we do not understand, but I say it's the original reality show for singers. And it started in Europe, and I don't know why Israel is a part of it, but anyway, last year Israel won, and it was a huge honor, and we were supposed to have it in the capital of Israel, but because of all the politics, so now instead of it being in Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, it will be happening in Tel Aviv. And actually, one of the big leaders of Hamas, we're going to use the quote because I think it's important because he said it. It's not just us imagining that he wants us not to have Eurovision happen here in Israel, is that he wants to prevent the enemy from holding a festival whose purpose is to undermine the Palestinian narrative. Now, that whole sentence is so scary because it's so misleading, because I don't know what the Palestinian narrative is, but I do know what the Palestinian false narrative is. Poor Seth is holding on to a lot of information, so he's going to come back and see him holding himself. And we should also note that Hamas has been in charge of Gaza since 2007. Mike's all yours, dude.
Okay, well...
Gave you just the background, no?
Yeah, you did great.
Thanks.
I think you did really good. One, let's understand this quote that no one's going to prevent Israel from holding this Eurovision contest.
So it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Nobody's going to boycott it. You think people might not show up? Maybe.
That's possible,
Right,
but Israel's going to have it. The show is going to go on, as they say in showbiz, and it's going to be a smashing success. The Palestinians are known to always...
A bit delusional if they really think they're going to stop it.
Yeah, and they're always claiming that they're going to do something and then are defeated. So it's
Well,
really a
do
sad
something.
thing.
I think 500 rockets is doing something that really would disturb a few people.
Well, they are doing that. The issue is, in Israel, is it's really not an existential threat. It's not going to take down the state. The problem is that Israel has become very comfortable, a rich country that has Iron Dome and things like that. If 500 rockets, let's be clear, were sent, and tragically, one man, a rocket hit a building in Ashkelon and killed a 58-year-old man, a father of four. Tremendous tragedy.
Because not only is this family fatherless, they're also homeless. I mean, this is insane.
But the other side of that is that Iron Dome has been a tremendous success because really, you think about 500 rockets, they should do more damage than killing one person, and it is a tremendous tragedy. If more people were dying, then Israel would really be at what looked visually on media as a war, and they'd be able to act more heavy-handed. Because all these rockets can be shot and really it can create one death, then the narrative is, look, we've done all this and we've only killed one person. Israel can't go and kill 500 people in response.
Well, it's just insane. It's just that whole response thing of numbers is so insane because they don't protect their people, and we know as a fact that they use their people as human shields. It's not unknown to anybody.
This situation is going to continue because it's a lack of leadership, and I'm going to say that Bibi Netanyahu is a failed prime minister in this regard because he can give no solutions for putting down this rebellion. Yeah. Now, a normal people and a normal country having 500 rockets coming in, as Alyssa is saying, would be able to put that rebellion down. The way you do that is you have to, unfortunately, make the population that is causing this difficulty suffer. And in warfare, which is not a pretty thing, things get broken. If the Palestinian people insist on having Hamas as their leadership,
they elected,
or otherwise, whether it's fair or not fair election, then Israel must go in and not just destroy buildings that have no people in them, because that's not a deterrent. They have to go in and start to reclaim Gaza and break things. And I don't mean by sending my son in or other boys in. This can be done from the air. Gaza is a very small place. We say, this is a warning to you. This 10-mile buffer for now is where no one can be. If you're there, consider yourself dead. And then if that doesn't stop it, we will continue to take portion after portion of Gaza until it's no longer.
I think it's really important that we add that the IDF, or the Israeli Defense Forces, which is the Israeli army, is a really moral army. People hear about it all the time. We can even get Seth's kid to come in here to talk about it because all these guys have endured such incredible training. And that before anything comes from the Israeli army, any type of bomb, explosion, anything that they do, except for maybe when they hit like a targeted Hamas leader. But anytime they do, they drop pamphlets and they warn the people, leave the building, we're about to take your building out, leave your building. Who does this in war? I don't know, especially when you're being attacked.
And you know what, Alyssa? That's not moral. Because by doing that, basically what you're doing is you're preventing...
Making us weak all the time.
And preventing the war from coming to a natural conclusion. You don't tell the enemy that to clear out and do that, because then it's a Pyrrhic victory. What you do is you go in and you hurt the population in a meaningful way, the same way you would train...
Why don't you use words that you really want to say?
What? Like you have to kill people?
Like that's what you wanted to say.
Well... In war, people get killed.
I don't really want to put you on the spot, but I think it's really important because we are using semantics.
I'm not using semantics.
And using terminology. And terminology brings us somewhere, because this weekend I actually met a Palestinian guy, which really blew my mind. He is a Gazan Arab. It was interesting to feel a human soul on the other side. And it gave me some level of compassion, understanding. I'm like a really super compassionate person. I don't like guns. I don't like the idea of killing. I don't like any of this. But I also don't like the idea of running to bomb shelters, nor feeling the ground under my feet shaking.
Right. So it's not compassion to basically invite danger to your own nation. War is an ugly thing.
It's an ugly thing. It's a horrible thing. And no one in Israel likes it, by the way.
Right. And, Tecumseh Sherman in the Civil War had to burn Atlanta to tell the population that the Confederate Army would have stayed in the field if you don't bring the civilian population to heal. Same thing with World War II. The Germans would have kept on fighting if we did not bomb Dresden and do very, very tough things. The Japanese would have fought if we did not bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These are examples of an army will stay in the field until the population understands it's been defeated. This is ugly.
But we're living with this population and they still don't know they've been defeated.
Okay.
And instead they live in this false narrative and they just torture us on a daily basis.
But how did World War II or the Civil War or other wars come to an end, the population in Atlanta
Declined?
no, they understood they had been defeated with tremendous casualties.
Does that mean they become prisoners of war, or they become part of the society?
Well, do you know how World War II ended?
I'm not as geeky.
No,
as
it's
you
not
say.
as geeky. You're totally smart. But
Thank you.
but Truman decided that if they were have to invade the Japanese mainland, there were going to be 100,000 U.S. casualties, death. He said, I'm not doing that. I have these tremendous weapons. I will drop a bomb on Hiroshima, which killed many, many people. The Japanese leader did not know he had been defeated with that. That's why a second bomb had to be dropped. Then they accepted defeat. So the Germans were firebombed in Dresden and Hamburg and other places because they would not heal either. And this is after their population firebombed London and did some unspeakable things and burned them up in gas chambers. What the population is doing to Israel in sending over 500 missiles today and doing that is with the intention of causing tremendous death. And when you do that to a population that's stronger than you, it's not okay for the stronger population to say, we just have to live with it. That's what I'm trying to get at. That's not moral. What you have to do is you have to say it's over, and by killing people. This is not a nice truth.
No, it's
but,
really it's
but a hard
difficult
thing to
truth,
hear.
and I think that is why there's so many liberal lefty Jews, because when you say that many people will be killed, I think that it breaks a lot of the Jewish spirit, especially those that might have a Shoah background. They split into two parties, you know that. One thinks, no, let's protect Israel and let this be a free land for the Jewish people. There is the other side, which is the liberal thinking, saying, we will never hurt a soul if it's for us to be in charge.
Well, do you think that they thought that firebombing Dresden to bring the Holocaust or Shoah to an end was moral, or you think that they should have just let the Germans continue to do it and not do something like that? What do you think?
You know, Seth, I'm not the history buff.
It's not a history buff.
I just know that I'm an emotional, very sensitive human being.
Okay.
And after 24 hours of seeing pictures from the Shoah, of just, and especially everybody I'd like to highlight, all go and check out eva.stories on Instagram. It's phenomenal. If you really, truly want to understand just a tad taste of what it was to be a 13-year-old in the Holocaust. It was 24 hours of my heart ripped out of my soul, not understanding how people just living their lives, normal lives, sitting there, innocent people. One was a pharmacist. And just the idea that a German soldier could come in and say, it's not your business anymore, it's ours. That they could literally go into people's homes, touch their stuff. Oh my God, my stomach, it was freaking out. To be thrown from your home and your all your comforts and niceties, to be thrown into a truck and brought to the ghetto. To be brought into the ghetto and say, here, and you're looking at 5 other families sitting in one room and you get 2 meals a day. To then, next thing you knew, these horrific people would come in constantly, either with someone bloody or beating someone. And the next thing you know, you were thrown on a train, 80 people in a train, in a pot to pee in. I mean, we have to stop. And that's why it's so many of us are so hurting and we can't hear about death anymore. But you know what, Seth? I'm sitting at the sea to get peace of mind from all of this yesterday on a bench that was kind of out into the sea a bit. And I was holding on because it was shaking, because the ground underneath me was shaking, because just only 22 miles away in Ashdod, they were being bombed, rocketed. Use whatever word you want to.
Correct. And all I want to just respond to that is that some very moral armies, the United States Army and the British Army, brought that horrendous war to an end by firebombing Dresden and bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Japanese raped China, the rape of Nanking. There's some very, very bad things that happened, and armies had to go in and put that to a stop immediately by being very, very tough with the civilian population.
But I'll tell you something. I'll tell you the way you speak. It's so interesting to me because I'm like, I have a modern head. I think in a modern way. We cannot use tactics of Dresden and tactics of years and decades before. But it seems, but look at what's going on. Primitively, it's insane. It's insane that we have kites, balloons being thrown over the border, that we have people with weapons and Molotov cocktails running through our borders like lunatics, because this is primitive behavior, and we obviously need to go down to that level in order to pick ourselves up in this situation. This is insane.
It's not going down to that level. It's actually moral. It's not moral to let a conflict like this continue to linger and fester and drive you and other people into shelters and have a 58-year-old father of four lose his life.
It's not, and everybody here in Israel is walking around with PTSD, and I'm sure everybody in Gaza is also walking around with PTSD. And let me tell you, PTSD is the most unsettling feeling in the world. I'm not going to go into it, but I've endured a hellish experience with what they call operations here in Israel, or I call them wars. But I can only tell you and describe it crystal clear like this. It's as if my heart was in my throat. And that's what it's like to hold until there's a ceasefire. And you're walking around and it's just, it's so hard to breathe during this time. And now maybe others aren't as sensitive and as emotional as I am, but...
Well, I think you are a very emotional person, and I have total respect for that, and I get that.
You don't feel fear? I was in fear getting in the car because I know that maybe we could hear a siren and we're going to have to jump out of the car in the middle of the highway and find shelter.
No fear.
And it's not comfortable, and it's an awful feeling besides discomfort.
As I've said before, and I think, as we're finding our voices and people will understand what motivates you and what motivates me, I feel privileged to live as a free Jew at a time where I have the ability to defend
you
myself.
feel empowered by being here.
Yes. So, in other words, what would really be tragic for me is to die on foreign soil. To live in my homeland and defend it and have to give up my life, God forbid, it's not something that I'm looking for. I'm not a jihadist. I'm just saying we're living, it's a beautiful day. The beach
You're
is
saying
beautiful.
like an Israeli living in Sri Lanka and they get killed in a terror attack in Sri Lanka. You think that's
the worst.
It's the worst. Interesting. It's interesting.
But living here and giving my life, if I had to, it would be something that gives me no fear. It gives me.
It's fascinating. Interesting.
What would be fearful is not to be able to defend myself. To be able to defend myself doesn't give me fear. But I understand the other side. I'm not saying that that's something that I can't comprehend.
Well, I want to just kind of bring this to a close and just give you a thought from my little sensitive heart and soul. And so the other day I came out of Yom HaShoah. It was like a day or two later, and I was riding my bicycle down, maybe Ben Gurion, and the streets are filled with flowers, and all the flags are up, and it's the Israeli flag. And to come out of Yom HaShoah, out of Holocaust Day, and to see the Magen David, the Jewish star, which was placed as an identity to like hurt us in public, now is like it was a really emotional feeling for me. And this time of year is always emotional because we are just blanketed with the Israeli flag, with the Magen David, with the Jewish Star of David.
I got my flag flying.
Right, I know, and I have to add it to my bicycle, which I always do.
And we're having a big barbecue on Thursday.
Barbecues, right? So let's just tell them really quickly what's going to happen. So I think it's about 8 o'clock on Tuesday night, that it's always Erev, as we've always explained the evening before. So this is going to be Yom HaZikaron. I'm going to say it because I say it with a prettier accent, yeah. So it's Yom HaZikaron, wow. And if Yom HaShoah wasn't a hard day, the Memorial Day in Israel, I finally understood what Memorial Day was. I had to come to Israel to understand what Memorial Day was. I never understood it in America, and now I really give respect to American soldiers. So we're going to Yom HaZikaron. And this is such a sad day, and it will start with a siren, which goes right through your soul. And we'll all stand, no matter where you are, the roads, everybody stops. You stop. You stop in respect. Arabs might not stand. Other people might not stand. Some ultra-Orthodox, we'll get into that, might not stand. And after we spend 24 hours, all the music on the radios, all the Israeli stations, all the Israeli television stations, it's just a sad day. Sad music, sad stories.
People that gave their lives so that the state could exist. Yes, that's what happened. That's what Memorial Day is about.
And then what's going to happen is the sun will go down and another evening will come up and the entire country will explode in fireworks and celebration. And I'm getting chills talking about it because it is our Yom HaAtzmaut, our Independence Day, the Declaration of the State of Israel. And man, it's a party here in the country, big party in the country. And during the day, there's barbecues, and at night, oh my God, it's off the hook. So Seth is inviting all of the country of Israel to his home. He'll send out the address. But
Hey, Yossi. And a good
always. Sending you much love, my dear. Wow. We ask you out there, everybody, send some positive vibes our way here in Israel.
Have some questions if you'd like to have a segment where we get some questions from the audience.
Keep us, please, in your prayers, because these next couple of days, supposedly there will be a ground invasion in Gaza, and that means those rockets are going to intensify, and us living in the bubble of Israel, in the center of Tel Aviv, we all have to run bomb shelters, a little slower partying, yes. So lots of light and love, and just keep hanging out with us. Shalom. Shalom.